Alrighty. So today, guys, actually prepared a couple of examples for you on the topic of attacking chess. We'll talk a little bit about the defensive side as well, because usually when one side gets a strong attack, the other side likely had chances along the way to avoid it or to defend better. But mainly gonna be throwing a lot of calculation exercises at you guys today. These first two players, actually Ravinsky here was a very strong attacking player, and you may have seen some of his combinations. He's an old Soviet master from, let's say, the 30s and the 40s, I want to say, the 1930s, the 1940s. And yeah, he's had some sparkling attacking games for sure. Levitsky also is a reasonably strong player, of course. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of these old Soviet masters that have some fantastic games to their name. Okay, just letting a couple of folks in. And, let's get to the critical moment. I'll just briefly play through the opening so you guys can kind of see how we get the position. Here we have a Najdorf and white plays f4. Kind of an older line. I know you Najdorf players probably don't see this one that often anymore, but this used to be one of the main ways for white to play for the attack. And I would say actually it's still very playable. The idea is to bring the knight back to f3, queen c7, bishop d3. Yeah, I mean, it's all equal in the Najdorf, right? So what's the difference? Might as well play a setup that makes sense. Isn't this called the McDonald attack? I'm actually not sure. I don't really think I know, or I've heard of a name for this one. Chess.com calls it the Amsterdam variation, which I have never heard before. I just call it f4. f4 line. Does bishop e3 give white some edge? I mean, no, all of these moves are, explored, way out, like super deep. Bishop e3, bishop g5, h3, f3. At the top level, it all kind of boils down into some kind of dynamic equality. But of course, chess is not a game between two humans that have everything memorized. Chess is a game between two humans that have to come up with their own moves, out of the opening. Okay, so knight d7, castles. Black goes b5, a3, bishop e7, king h1, very logical move. Black castled here. And now white goes f takes e5, d takes e5, and knight h4. All right, guys, let's try to keep the chat on topic. We're 2 minutes in and we're already drifting a bit. Well, in a second, I'm going to ask you guys to calculate something, so then I'll have to close the chat. Okay, now white just played knight h4. Of course, the idea is to bring the knight to f5, and to this effect, black plays the move bishop to d8. Kind of a strange retreating move, but getting out of the attack of the knight on f5. After this, we'll see a game that Tal played where his opponent went for knight c5, which I think is a little bit more natural here. So bishop d8, queen e1, knight c5, white goes bishop g5, bishop e6, knight f5, knight h5 now, trying to trade off these bishops and get some control over the dark squares. White goes queen h4. Now black plays knight to f4. Okay, guys, let me close the chat here. And now it is white to play. Let me give you guys some time to think about it here. And Austin says this does look kind of scary. Is it still equal? Well, that's the thing. During the game, you might know what the engine, is supposed to say, but you still have to still have to figure it out on your own, right? And so these positions are, of course, very, very difficult to play. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes here to think about it. You can start calculating and trying to figure out what you would like to do. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. The timer. So yes, 5 minutes. Definitely don't have to rush to submit an answer. This is not a position where you just want to blitz something out quickly. So let me give you guys some time to calculate. Obviously, a lot of forcing options here for white, a lot to calculate. So do try to be concrete. Alrighty, so lots of good suggestions here. What are our main candidate moves in the position for white? Even if it's not the move that you necessarily chose, what is, let's say, or what are white's main options here? What do you guys think? Yeah, knight takes g7, definitely a serious choice. Rook takes f4 as well, was very commonly suggested. And we have moves like knight d5 can be considered as well. Yeah, definitely. I mean, really any kind of strong forcing move can be and should be considered a candidate, right? You don't really know if the move is good until you start kind of looking at it and analyzing. Yeah, where to begin? So a couple of people had the idea to go both knight takes g7 and rook takes f4 in some order. Maybe knight takes g7 first, maybe rook takes f4 first. In the game, white played knight takes g7. And of course, a very sharp sacrifice. I know a lot of you guys were probably looking at this one. Before we go into this one, I know a few people suggested knight d5. And this one's very forcing. Okay, hitting the queen. I think black's best here would be to take this one. And let's say the idea would be e takes d5. Unless you guys had another idea, you can let me know. Then this is, of course, a very serious threat, so black has to take on d3. And it's not clear if white has quite enough here. For example, let's say takes, there's takes, queen takes, and then f6 to cover the g7 square. And then, yeah, I mean, white has this d pawn, still not super clear, but probably black is doing all right here. Okay, knight takes g7. Now I want to do something a little different. I want to flip the board. And now I'll give you guys a chance to calculate from black's point of view. So you're playing black in the position. You've played the knight, or if your best opening. Your opponent has played this trash with f4, some of you guys called it. And now you're getting hit with knight takes g7. So very critical here to figure out what to do. Black might just be losing. Honestly, during the game, you might not really know if you didn't anticipate the sack from afar. But it's very important to be precise, whether you're on the attacking side or on the defending side. Okay, so let me give you guys another few minutes here. We might not use up the whole time, but I want you guys to feel like you have time to calculate. Black to play, how to proceed. Alrighty, guys, last chance to get your answers in. So this is a very tough question for black, what to do. Now, let me ask you guys this. What should be black's first candidate move here? What do y'all think? Because it's not necessarily the most forcing move that we want to check first. What should be the main candidate move we kind of look at first before we, let's say, look at anything else? I don't know, maybe this is more of a practical question. A lot of folks are saying knight g6. It's definitely a candidate move. F6, sure, something we can consider. But I think the first move we need to look at is king takes g7. Yeah, even if you think, okay, it's probably a poison knight or it's probably winning sacrifice, like when you're defending, first thing you kind of want to do is like understand the opponent's idea, right? Because maybe the sacrifice doesn't work. Maybe white missed something or blunders something, right? We definitely don't want to just because the opponent sacrificed the piece, trust that they calculated everything out. So it's very important to first kind of understand, okay, what's happening on king takes g7. And so what did you guys think here, those of you that looked into this one? What is white's expected follow-up? And is black surviving there? Okay, does anyone have the full line? So there's rook takes f4. There's also queen h6. But let's see if someone can give me the full line or a full line. So rook takes f4, black will go ef4. If queen h6 check, black will go king to g8. And then I'm seeing e5 there. Black does have a move. So I'll take off the arrows because I think the arrows are actually a little bit distracting. So the line we're looking at: king takes g7, rook takes f4, ef4, queen h6 check, king g8, e5. Let's say black goes knight takes d3 in that position. Can white continue the attack, or is it over? Roger says bishop f6, very good. Okay, so let me give you guys the position once again, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So king takes g7, some visualization practice. Rook takes f4, e takes f4, queen h6 check, king g8, e5, knight takes d3. Then bishop f6 is indeed a problem, yeah? It's deep, but if you take the knight and go into this variation and then don't see bishop f6, of course, game could be over, just like that. Okay, but knight takes d3 was not the only move there. So let's back up. So king takes g7, queen h6 check. Or sorry, rook takes f4 first, just to keep it simple. ef4, queen h6 check, king g8, e5. Then there's another move there, f5. Very good. Exactly. So king g7, rook takes f4, ef4, queen h6 check, king g8, e5, f5. And what's going on there? Does white have a move or no? Take on passant, right? But then what is exactly the threat in that position? Not really clear. h7 is defended with our queen. Bishop e4, knight e4 doesn't seem super convincing. So maybe black is okay. We still have knight takes d3 in the position if we want, right? So if white goes b4, we can go knight takes d3 and try to simplify. And then yeah, if we get that rook to f7, covering g7 square, hard for white to show anything. Okay, so what are you guys thinking? Is it working for black, or are we missing something? Roger, at what point? I'm not sure when you want to play b4. Okay, let's flip the board. I like doing this. We'll play king takes g7. White doesn't believe you. Or black doesn't believe you, excuse me. Okay, white to play. We've sacrificed the piece. Now, ideally, we would have already calculated what we're doing on king takes g7, but of course, this was not your game. This was Ravinsky's game, but I'm putting you in this position now. White to play. Try to find the most convincing win here. Yeah, so the line we were looking at earlier, which doesn't seem to be working, is rook takes f4, ef4, queen h6 check, king g8, and then e5, f5. So white is looking for some improvement on this line. No, because here, because white has sacrificed a lot of material, right? We've sacrificed a piece. Now when we play rook takes f4, we're sacrificing an exchange, so we're going to be down a whole rook in that position, yeah? So, yeah, other than that, everything is great in white's position, I would agree. Okay, let me give you guys some time here. Give you 3 minutes for this one. White to play and when? Can we figure it out? The key here is this problematic line that we've been looking at. Rook f4, queen h6, king g8. On e5, there's always f5. Yeah, definitely give me more than one move, guys. If you see a winning line, I want to see the whole line. Nice job, Chen Chuan. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but your line is correct. Alrighty, last call. Okay, so yeah, nice job, guys. A lot of you noticed. So the line we were looking at before, rook f4, check. And the problem was e5 is always being met with f5. White's attack is shut down if ef6. Actually, yeah, just knight takes d3. And not enough material, down a full rook. So, you guys noticed here, since e5 is allowing f5, there is this famous Fischer game some of you guys might have seen, Fischer Benko, from I think it was one of the US championships, where Fischer plays very famous move, rook f6, exactly. Exactly, and that situation was a little bit different. There, white had a queen on h5, black had a queen on e8, and black had just played queen e8, wanting to go f5. So Fischer launches his rook into f6. There's a bishop on g7, and if black takes the rook, the idea is he can go e5, and now there's no f5 with this block. So here, actually, very similar idea. Bishop f6. Okay, threatening mate takes e5. Again, threatening mate, knight takes d3, e takes f6, and black has no good way of stopping the checkmate. So this actually is what happened in the game. Knight f2 was played, knight h3 check, some desperate checks, but the king slowly walks out. And here black resigned because bishop takes e2, White is going to play king e1, of course. And yeah, beautiful finish. So actually, it's funny. The Fischer game was something like 1961 or 1963. This game is from 1952, so even earlier version of this this idea, this kind of blockade sacrifice. So, okay, now we kind of understand the problem from Black's point of view. So that's why king takes g7 was no good, because of this exact idea with bishop f6. So let's go back to this moment. Let's flip it around. And let's think about it again from Black's point of view. What should Black do in this position? Now, a few of you guys were suggesting knight g6, hitting the queen. But this one is problematic since White can, let's say, hop out, take on e6, hitting Black's queen. Let's say knight takes e6, and bishop takes d8. White keeps, okay, healthy extra pawn. Black's king is pretty weak. Maybe somewhat survivable position for Black after queen takes d8, but doesn't look like a lot of fun. Knight d5 is coming, and yeah, White's still a pawn ahead, maybe queen g3 or something like that. So this one is not quite enough. Definitely better than getting mated, for sure. But we want to find something a little bit better. So use the same kind of thinking trick that White did. If you remember back here, White probably considered this line in their calculations with idea knight takes d3, bishop f6, as we were looking at, but then realized, oh, here Black is f5. What if I revert the move order, start with bishop f6 first, and then e5? So try to use this kind of like similar line of thinking, working backwards in a way. Before playing king takes g7, what else can Black throw in here? Knight g6, again, not the best solution. There is f6, but then again, Black or White will take on e6 and kind of get out with the extra material. Also f6, I think maybe bishop takes f4 also is kind of a problem. So what else can Black do to avoid this this line where they're just getting mated? Any other candidate moves in the position? Yeah, very good, Venkata. Knight takes d3. That's probably important. Which knight? Let's say this knight, because it's kind of further from the action, and this one is defending the king side. By throwing this one in, actually Black could have survived the attack. Because if White recaptures, of course, then there's no more light squared bishop, right? So now Black can bravely take. And if we go down the same line, then it's not the same attack for White anymore, right? Bishop f6, we're just trading, and there's no e5. And if e5 here, looking for bishop f6, well, there's no threat on h7, right? So Black can probably just take this one. Maybe other things as well. So this move, knight d3, is not the most obvious move. It's not the one that like comes to mind, especially your opponent plays knight takes g7. You know, the first thought isn't to like, oh, let's go knight takes d3. But once you calculate king takes g7, if you're lucky enough to see this trick, bishop f6, you see that it's not working, then of course you have to find something else. And then this move does become actually quite logical, because it's a very forcing move and you're taking off a key attacking piece that White has. There are other lines here, but I believe Black is basically surviving. Let's say knight takes e6. Black takes back. Now the queen can also jump into g7. Actually, that's a nice trick. If cd3, queen g7 right away. And then we're hitting this one. And white cannot take here because queen hanging on h4. So the tactics are kind of working out here for black. But it's all about taking off this this key bishop. What about rook takes f4? Do you mean before knight takes g7 in this position? Oh, sorry, in the other line. Yeah, let's go there. So takes, queen g7, rook takes f4. Well, there's bishop g5, I think looks most logical. Say takes, rook takes. Yeah, white's up a pawn. I think black's position is reasonable, but maybe we can do better as black. Yeah, rook takes f4. That looks more convincing. First option, not so fun. This option, more fun. Okay, bishop takes d8, take the queen. And yeah, I would think definitely not enough here for white. Just a lot of weaknesses in the position, and feels like white's pieces aren't really strong enough. Yeah. Wait, no, white has, I mean, enough. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. What am I talking about? This is two pieces. I thought I had a rook and a bishop for the queen. No, two pieces, of course, not enough. Not enough. No, it has to be very special circumstance. So these kinds of moments do happen, and they're very tough, especially because psychologically your opponent sacrifices on g7. The first instinct is to try to find some way to bail out, but usually this is quite hard. Another instinct is to just take the piece because you feel like you have to, but of course it's always better to calculate and try to figure things out ahead of time, yeah, before it's too late. So yeah, in the game, black did take, and then the game ended in this nice fashion. And of course, as the attacking side, if you're playing these kinds of positions, you do need to be willing and able to calculate a line like this. Otherwise, these positions can go south for white very quickly. There was another game where Averbach-Bronstein, Averbach played g3, and here black just snapped on g5, played f6, queen g4, took on d3, played g6, and black was extremely comfortable and already better. White tried knight d5, takes, king h8, and yeah, now white had to start moving backwards. Black's structure was better and eventually went on to win. So of course these attacking positions, they're always double-edged for both sides. We often see the flashy attacking wins, but there are just as many games where black just defends the attack and then is strategically better. I want to jump to another game here, guys. Let's go to this position. It's actually a somewhat famous game by Mikhail Tal, so some of you guys might have seen it before. Let's see, the player names haven't really updated. Let me do this another way. We want to get the player names in. I'll just type it in. Of course, Tal was a brilliant attacker. And actually, we're going to look at it from black's point of view. So here's a situation. I'll give you guys a second here to take stock and try to evaluate things. Black is up some material. Oh, wait, I messed up black's name completely here. Excuse me. It was Tasman. There we go. And white's last move was king h2, which might clue you into what's white's idea here. In fact, that's probably the, well, actually one of the first questions it's always good to ask when we're defending is what is the opponent's next move, right? What is their threat? If you don't see the threat, then you won't know what to defend against. But if you see the threat, then that clues you into what you might need to do in the given position. So white's last move was king h2. Try to think about it, guys. What is their idea here? Why is this move helping white's position? And yeah, and then that might give you a hint as to what black should do. And the previous position, white could have taken on f6, as you guys notice. But then after takes, queen takes, black is up a rook there. So not so easy. King h2 does stop some checks, but it's important to figure out which checks exactly white was afraid of. Okay, let me give you guys some time here. I think we'll do 5 minutes, because this one is, again, pretty tough. Defense is very, very difficult, because it's like you have to see all the tactics for the opponent and make sure you're not walking into anything. So black to play. First step, figure out what's white's threat. Second step, figure out how to deal against it. Yeah, sometimes even if you see the threat, it's not so easy to figure out how to deal with it. Okay, very good, Jenny. Very nice. Alrighty, so now that you guys had 5 minutes, let me ask you again. So what is white's main threat in the position? If it was white to play here, what would white be doing? Rook h3. That's the big threat here. Rook h3 threatening h7. And if black plays knight h7 there, just to blockade, then what's the follow-up? Queen e8, big problem. Yeah. So if you guys mentioned rook a8, I think that's definitely a very decent move. Because then on rook h3, you can still go knight h7. Now it's not over yet. White will have rook d3 in that position. What can black do there? So remember, rook is on a8, right? So rook a8, rook h3, knight h7, rook d3, queen b7. Does white have anything? Queen e6 check, very good. Queen f7. Can white keep it going? Or is it over? So we're looking at rook a8, rook h3, knight h7, rook d3, queen b7, queen e6 check, queen f7. And then white to play. Is there any moves for white there, or is the line over? Queen a6, I think not working there because rook d8, knight f8. No, Austin, rook is going to a8 in this line. So rook is on a8. So let's take a look. So rook a8, definitely a very reasonable try here. Rook d3. Queen b7. Otherwise, queen e6 check or queen takes here. Queen e6 anyway. Queen f7. And there is one move here for white to actually keep the game going. So black gets one move to consolidate here, then it's going to be all over. Yeah, very good, Ryan. Queen c6. It's actually very tricky because, I mean, you have queen f4 check. Let's say white moves the king somewhere. b8, but it's still very, very tricky, right? There's going to be like rook f4, rook f3, excuse me. And then there's queen e6, and we want to take this one. So this would still be very unclear. Yeah, if queen c1 check, then king goes to h2. And yeah, black has a draw if black wants. So the draw is definitely not the worst result, but maybe black could be playing for more. There's a question about queen takes a6. Oh, I see. Oh, right. Actually, I missed your idea here. So this one is, yeah, definitely quite clever, but I don't think it's actually... Black is still going to be up the piece at the end, right? So takes. And black is at least not losing this. Oh, rook h6. Nice. Very nice. Yeah, then black definitely doesn't lose. So yeah, pretty idea. Definitely worth checking, but just barely doesn't work. So queen c6 here, and it's still a game. Black can play like rook e8 and also just give the knight. And then it's still a piece up, but as long as these pawns are on the board, it's like kind of hard for black to maneuver around this. So rook a8 was possible. In the game, black played rook e7, which you guys suggested as well. There's also a suggestion of rook f7. So this one runs into the same thing, rook h3, and then on knight h7, rook d3. Let's say queen a8, and now white to play. Try to find the strongest move. Let me flip it here. Yeah, very good, Kevin. Very good, Venkata. Gotta look for those Those forcing threats. Good job, Austin. Ryan. Okay, very nice. Yeah, queen b6. Queen slides over, and all of a sudden, how to stop rook d8 check? It's the big question. So rook f7 is not working for this reason. Rook e7. Once again, white goes rook h3. This is actually what happened in the game. Knight h7. Rook d3. Black played queen a8. Now there's no queen b6 because black has rook e8. But maybe white has something else. So white to play. Yeah, very nice, Ryan. Yeah, nice job, Kevin, Roger. No, Ryan, I can take and then block. Queen a6 is definitely a try. Then black probably plays like queen e8, something like that. Yeah, queen takes e4. Nice job. Yeah, good job, Kelsey. And this was the game. Queen takes e4, rook d8. If black doesn't take, the issue is this queen is coming into d5, and that's going to be very, very unpleasant, along with the back rank. So takes, check, promotes, rook d6. Luckily for black, the pieces, or for white, the pieces coordinate. King f5, queen g6, king f4. And once the king starts coming up, it's usually over. g3 was played, rook d3. And now is over as black has to give the queen. It was soon resigns. Unfortunately for black, he probably missed this trick with queen takes e4. And also this was very, not an easy one to see, that rook h3 and then back to d3. And all of a sudden, black has back rank issues because of this constant threat of g8 equals queen. So of course, this is why white played king h2 earlier. This is what would have clued black in. And probably black recognized that the idea was to play rook h3, but maybe wasn't realizing that white also wants to go rook d3. And of course, both of these moves are possible because there's no knight f2 check. Okay, so what should have black have done? Rook a8, as we established, was definitely a possible defense. I don't think black is losing there. There's another creative way to deal with the threat of rook h3. We can call it, and rook d3. We can call it, let's say I would refer to it as kind of a prophylactic move. Queen d1, I think, doesn't quite work. What's the idea after rook h3? Because rook d3, of course, well, actually even rook d3 might be a problem, because queen h5 trades and rook d8. Is there queen e8? Queen e8 actually might work too. Actually, that's funny. Knight g4, I think we just take. And we got this one, and probably good for white. But yeah, maybe we don't even need this. This is a very nice trick as well. And see, promote first or rook h8 and then queen on g8. Rook h8, king g6, queen, king f5. Let's try to be concrete, because we can win a knight in many ways, but we don't want to allow it like queen h5 check or something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure. It feels like it could still be easy to mess this up, but feels like white should be winning here. Okay, let's say this, and oh yeah, maybe here we take, yeah, now that this one's covered. If black has no counterplay, then it's probably hopeless. There was knight g7 as well. The minimum we just take, yeah. And we also, this is always the dream, when you can find something where the opponent has no checks, attack continues. And now, of course, we're only down a piece, and yeah, we have a million checks coming up, so it should be winning. Maybe this one. Yeah, black's king is just too weak. Okay, so queen d1 doesn't quite work, but there is another way to take advantage of the rook moving, and that is queen d2, which is a very concrete move, of course, computer defense, but was the only move to actually give black just a very clearly winning position. Yeah, number one, there's a threat takes knight g4. But main point is that black is ready for queen f4 check, so not letting white go rook h3, because then queen f4 is a big problem. So for example, here, check, let's say king goes to g1. And now black to play, how to continue from here. Because white still, of course, wants to do something pretty dangerous to our king. Yeah, very good, Venkata. Roger. Yeah, we don't have knight h7 because queen e8 again. But we can play knight g5 and just cover this one with brute force. Having two extra pieces involved in the defense often pays off. And now black is finally kind of consolidating. Now the checks are actually covered. So a hard find, but necessary. In the game, like I mentioned, black played rook e7, which is very logical, because covering queen e8 check, right? So now rook h3, he has knight h7, but missed the deeper trick with this one, which not easy to see. But that's why a lot of these games, they pay off for the attacker. I mean, Tal, he was kind of infamous for making quote-unquote unsound sacrifices, but he ended up winning a lot of games because it's not easy to find the computer defense. That said, very important part of the game, and also something that should be worked on, is learning to defend concretely, because you will get many opponents that sacrifice something, go for the attack, and you might have an only move to survive, you might have an only move to win the game, but very important to be able to find that that cold-blooded move to save it. And when you're on the attacking side, it's important to realize you will often have chances because people don't defend perfectly. Okay, guys, I had a couple more examples, but maybe we'll save them for another time. think that's going to do it for today's class. Hope you found it hard and somewhat enjoyable. Yeah, I'll be seeing you guys next time. Next class should be on Monday. Alrighty, folks, have a good one.